Hello and welcome to the If We Knew Then podcast. I'm Steven Sachs.
And I'm Lori Sachs.
And today we're joined by Sader Issa from Syria.
He is a delightful young man whose story you may be familiar with, as his father has Down syndrome. This interview is life-changing for me as a mom. It brought so much joy just meeting him and talking to him and learning about his life. And then on another level, I'll tell you as a parent, he just defied one of the things that very early on, before it needed to be an issue with Liam, that we were told Liam would most likely never have a family if he could be on his own. So I love that my morning began with speaking with him, and just when we finished, I had a different perspective on everything. And one of the great things is we are constantly trying to open our minds. We are constantly working on making changes and changing perception and perspective. And it's such a gift when your own perspective and perception is changed and opened and widened. And let's get to it. Let's share this beautiful conversation with a wonderful young man.
Sader, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
We're very excited. Thank you for making time for us. I know you're staying very busy.
It's not a problem. It's because we're now having college exams, all this stuff, because of the quarantine was 3 months ago, and now we have exams and all this stuff. But of course, I have time for you guys. Of course, it's not a problem.
It's wonderful you're able to help people.
Yeah, of course.
You kind of started, but maybe could you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
My name is Sader Issa, and I come from Syria. I was born and raised here in Syria in a small town. It's called Al-Baida in Hama government. The local population is about 1,500 people. That's it. So it's a very small town, and people here we know each other. So it's a very peaceful, very kind environment to be born into. I'm also born to a father with Down syndrome, and I recently realized that it is the first known story, worldwide, of a doctor or a medicine or dentistry student born to a father with Down syndrome. So that's very exciting, of course. We're living here, our simple life here in Syria. We're living in a safe town here in Syria, and things are going well with us. Hopefully, the general situation here in Syria can get much better, and we hope it happens soon, because many people unfortunately live in regions where they have, war conflicts, bombings, and all this stuff. So we hope peace for all Syria and all the world.
Well, when I heard your story and reached out to you, that was one of my concerns with you, is just where you live and making sure that you're safe. So good to hear that.
Yeah. We've never had any war conflict in our region, thank God. We were suffering just from the general things that's happening in Syria, like economical blockade, travel blockade on Syria, and all this stuff. But in war conflicts and all this stuff, we thank God we did not suffer from any of this stuff.
Well, I don't know if you've been told, but we can tell you from the United States and the people that we've grown up with here that we support you and your country completely.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And we want peace.
Yeah.
I just want to say your story, your personal story, is going to bring peace to a lot of people, because being raised by a father with Down syndrome, when we have a child or we find out we're pregnant and we get that diagnosis, a lot of negatives are given to us. A lot of, they tell us everything that our child will never do. And when I heard that your father had Down syndrome, I just had so many questions for you, because you're taking what they tell us and you're shattering that. But then also I want to hear about your life, because that's another thing. You've obviously lived a great life, and you have everything that's instilled in you, and the foundation that you're coming from is beautiful. And just knowing that it brings joy and peace to a lot of parents' hearts who are told that these are things that your child will never do right off the bat.
Yeah, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your dad.
Well, of course, my father is called Sader Issa. He is a 45-year-old man with Down syndrome. He is a good father. He's a good husband. He has been working for over 25 years in the same factory. It's a local wheat grinding factory, and he's well respected in his society, especially after our story was shared worldwide. He became, like a famous person here in Syria. So everyone who come to buy products from the factory that he works in, they always recognize him. They always like to say hi to him and just know more about him. And a lot of these people get surprised when they, talk to him and interact with him because they realize that he is a smart guy. He's a funny guy. He's very social, and that's something that they don't know much about people with Down syndrome. And I hope to be able one day to show this unique character, this very special mindset to all this world. I hope one day to be able to share his character with all the world in general. Hopefully we will do it in future. As I said, he's a very smart guy. He's a funny guy. He's a good husband as a and a family leader. And hopefully you will get the chance to meet him one day.
Oh, that would be wonderful. That'd be wonderful.
As if you ever want to do a podcast with him, we would love that. We'd love to talk to him.
Yeah. He speaks only Arabic. I will have to translate him, but it's not a problem, of course. He's now at work. It's 8 p.m. here, and he's still at work. He usually comes around 10 p.m. He comes at dinner for a couple of hours, and he returns to his work. But that's only in the summer. In the winter, he's always at home. He works only for 5 or 6 hours because there is no. It's not the wheat season here in Syria, so there is no much work to do. Hopefully, we can do such thing. It's not a problem.
When did you find out that your father had Down syndrome, and how did you find out?
Well, I think I was about 10 or 11 years old. I started to realize that he is different. He's different from other parents. He's different from other people. But I didn't, quite understand how and why he was different. I just knew that there was something different from the other parents, different from the other people that we know. I didn't ask questions about it because, here in Syria or in the traditions or in the culture, in the general culture here, it's not appropriate to ask such questions. So you have always to find your answers in one way or another. So after a while, we started learning about Down syndrome in school. First of all, the naming was different to me. So I didn't know Down syndrome as this name because common people here in Syria still refer to Down syndrome as Mongolism. So Down syndrome was a new name to me, was the name, the international name of my father's case, the name that I can reach and search for my questions that I have in my mind. So, in school, we got very simple information about Down syndrome. And as you said earlier, we get only the things that the person with Down syndrome will not be able to do in the future or may have to suffer from in the future. And we don't get anything about the positive side of Down syndrome or the different abilities that they have. At first it was a bit sad, to know about all the problems that my father may have to face in the future or may be facing right now. But after a while, all these negative informations just started to fade in the background. I just see my funny father, my healthy father, and my strong father. He used to be very muscular when he was younger. So all these negative ideas started to fade in the background, and I just started to understand more about his character, more about Jad, or more about my father as a person, not about a diagnosis, a Down syndrome diagnosis. And it took some time, but at the end, I started to realize who was really him. Not the diagnosis, not the things that we learn in the books. That they won't be able to do this and they won't be able to do that. All these negative ideas just faded, and he returned to be just my father, my lovely father, without any kind of labels. So, and I don't like to label him. But now, since we are advocating for Down syndrome, I always say I am the son of a father with Down syndrome. But I don't quite like it. I'm the son of Jad Isa. I don't like to always put labels on him. But due to the work that we are doing right now, I have to always say that I have a father with Down syndrome. But before we do all this reports and articles, all this stuff, we didn't even mention this. It just faded. We just stopped thinking about it.
That's kind of how we feel in our household too. That we do talk. We feel like we talk about it a lot because we, like you said, are advocates. But Liam, who is 10, our son is 10, has an older sister, Sophia, who's 2 years older, and it just wasn't anything that she really questioned. And then once she got some answers, it was just kind of there, and that was because, like you said, you didn't want to label somebody. It's not who they are, totally.
Yeah.
And you don't want to put those limits.
Yeah, you don't want any of those negative, like you said, the negative information to then put any limits on anyone.
And you said and you had some questions and that you didn't really talk to your father about it. Have you ever talked to your father about Down syndrome?
No, actually, I don't. As I said, it's not something, comfortable to speak with. It's totally, especially in our culture in general, it's not, let's say, appropriate to talk about such things with the person who has this defect or this problem or this diagnosis. We think of it as something polite, to just not question these people about these topics, because not all people are comfortable with sharing these information, and may some people may just start losing their confidence, or just start, how can I say it, just start, think different about themselves, and think that we are always have these questions in my minds about them. So we try to not put other people in such weird or awkward situations. That's it. But I got my answers at the end. It's not always right, it's not always good to deal with things with this kind of attitude, and it's not the only problem in the Arabic culture. There's many other problems that need fixing, and this is one of them, that we are not always honest with the other people about all the questions in my mind. So I think that that is something that could have been fixed if we just had a better idea about it.
Do you think that's how your father grew up as a young man and a boy, I guess? Do you think that he was talked to about Down syndrome, or is that something that would have been shied away with as well?
Yeah, shied away, of course, unless he was interacted with some bullies, because, as I said, people here in general refer to Down syndrome people as Mongols or Mongolism, and as a word, it's not very acceptable here in Syria, and people are not always frank about it, or not always honest about what they have in mind, especially when they are treating with people with Down syndrome or any other diagnosis. So I think it's totally was shied away.
Sauter, I think a good thing that came from that, by not speaking those negatives and imposing those boundaries on your father, he wasn't told that he could never do all these things, and he's doing all the things that are written on a piece of paper that say these are things that your child will never do.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you covered this, but how did it feel when you realized your father had Down syndrome, and how has that feeling changed, if it has changed?
Well, at the beginning, as I said, it was a bit sad because I knew more about the problems that he might have in the future, like diabetes and heart problems, all these stuff. But it didn't change anything inside of me. I didn't feel ashamed of him. I didn't feel that I don't love him. He was always my friend, especially when I was just a little kid. He used to always play with me. He used to always stay around me. Now, because I'm at college, I don't have much time to spend with him. But at that time, he was just my friend. He was always playing with me, always sharing with me the beautiful moments, beautiful stories, and it didn't change my feelings towards him. As I said, I just felt a bit sad because he might have some problems in the future, and as I said, these negative ideas just faded in the background, and all this sad feelings just turned normal, and now and turned to much love and appreciation towards him, because now I know that there's certain problems that he might be having, and even though he is working hard, he is trying to spend most of his time at work to just be able to spend on this family and give us our normal lives. So after I realized, and after I became older, and after I got a better understanding of his situation, it became respectful feelings towards him, very loving feelings towards him, because some people think of him as someone not capable of doing all this stuff, and even though he did them all. So that of course gives me much love, much respect towards him. And I don't think that this feelings will ever change for anything in life, whether it was a diagnosis or anything else. I'm sorry about I'm getting a bit confused in English speaking, but I don't speak English all the time. So I hope you get my ideas.
Totally. You speak wonderful English. Is that commonplace in Syria to learn English?
No, 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 not at all. Especially in Syria, you can find people speaking English in other Arabic countries like Lebanon, United Arab Emirates, all these countries. But especially in Syria, the only spoken language is Arabic. And even in university, we learn dentistry, and we learn medicine, we learn all these fields in Arabic. And I think it's one of the very few Arab countries that do so. So not many people speak English at all. Not many people understand anything about English. Very few people speak English, and very few people are good at speaking English with no Arabic accent, I think.
Well, Arabic is such a beautiful language with such amazing history.
A good history, but people have recently are going way extreme, not in religious aspect, but a racist aspect, and all these bad stuff. And the Arab countries, you can find a one Arab country with democracy, and with good human rights, and with good economical aspect, unless you're speaking about the Gulf countries where they have all this oil and all this stuff. The Arabic history is very rich, it's very good, but the last generations have spoiled it all, have just did some horrible things that put this great land in such a bad situation, such in politically or economically, and in all the aspects.
There's a lot of suffering, but what I was going to say was with this beautiful language that you have that you've grown up with, but being able to now speak very well in English, your father and your story can reach so many more people.
That's what we are trying to do. The first video was all in Arabic. I don't know if you watched the video or just read the articles about our story, but we made our first video interview, and it was all in Arabic, but it was translated to English with English subtitles.
Yeah, I saw the video with subtitles and then read an article.
Yeah, we're planning to for the next video to for me to be speaking English and my parents with Arabic with the English subtitles. I think it could, as I said, it could reach more people around the world.
To go back to your family dynamic, your father being so close to you when you were a boy, what was your family dynamic like? You're an only child, I believe. Maybe you could tell us how your mother and father met and what their relationship's like.
Back in the days in Syria, it was not common for men and women to date and to go all by themselves. So especially in small societies like towns, little towns, or little villages. So, in one way or another, the guy who wants to introduce himself to this lady have to find a proper way to introduce himself to tell her more about his feelings towards her and his whether he loves her or not or whether he likes her or not. So for my father and mother, both of them are from different towns. So I believe they met first when my father was visiting my aunt. My aunt's husband was a judge here in Syria, and he had this family who was doing a case with him since he was a judge, and they suddenly met, my father and my mother. Both of them actually have intellectual problems, and I don't know why most of the people think that my mother don't have any kind of disability, and she is like I forgot this word, like she is marrying this little baby. Some unfortunately some people describe it as this way, like a full grown woman, and with all her intellectual abilities are marrying someone with some intellectual disabilities. They see it as exploitation, I think this word is.
Yeah, exploiting.
Yeah. But that's not the case. Both my parents have intellectual disabilities. My mother has a slight mental delay, but it's not noticeable until you closely interact with her. But they are intellectually at the same level. They are very simple people, but very kind, very loving, and very have a such a strong determination in life. So they met by coincidence as I said, at my aunt's house when my mother's family was, doing some business with my aunt's husband. The two families start to discuss whether it's, appropriate because, people here, especially people with disabilities, can't decide by themselves whether they want to get married to their partners or whether they want to do anything, any formal thing here in Syria. So the two families had to discuss this marriage, and my father and mother had to get more arranged dates between them. My mother can come to my aunt's house when my father is there, or my father can go to my mother's house when their family is there, and they can just sit with each other and discuss about their lives and discuss about their jobs and all this stuff. I don't know if you get the general idea of it, but that's how things or marriages used to be done here in Syria.
No, I think that's something in the United States we've lost. But if you go back a few years, you can go to where there was a real courtship. There were steps involved, and it was tightly monitored by the parents.
I think when you have changed here, in Syria, we are now more westernized. We now don't have, it's not acceptable anymore to have such marriages at that time.
Okay.
That's just to clarify.
Now, growing up with these two beautiful people you've described, and I think of parents' roles in their children's lives, and there's discipline involved. And I was just curious about how you were disciplined as a child. You talk about how this loving family, and you lived with your parents in their own home, or how did that work?
Yeah, we have our own home here in our town, and my parents were very protective, me when I was a little kid. So I became a bit shy, as a little child, and it didn't take much to for disciplines, it just took a look from my mother or my father or just simple word to stop doing this thing. It is not good, or stop, playing with this stuff or anything like that. And that's it. I was not, unfortunately, I was not very naughty as a little kid, but that's it. I was a bit shy. It took just a word or a look from them to stop whatever I was doing.
So what a beautifully normal life you had and have, and that's really a great message to send to people that here's two people that may have some difficulties, but they're just given the right and then successfully have their own home and raise a child, and just like any typical person.
Sader, when you got a little bit older, kids tend to try to push the boundaries a little bit or test the limits. Did you do that? And
No, no, no,
no.
no. I was, as I said, I was a bit shy, as a little kid. Even when I got a bit older, I didn't tend to, try to all these risky stuff or risky games that the kids in my age do. So no, I didn't have this kind of experiment.
And you had a relationship with your parents, your grandparents?
No, no, unfortunately, I answered this question. My grandparents have passed away before I was born. So all what I know about them is from, these stories that my parents have with them. They always tell me that they were nice with them, that they, tried all their best to provide the best opportunities for my father in his life. And they were not always successful because things were very hard at that time. Like my father is doesn't know how to read and write because there was no special education, or teachers in general did not know how to cope with people with Down syndrome or intellectual disabilities. So he was not able to learn how to read and write, and that was something that broke my grandmother's heart. She wanted him to be at least just be able to read simple stuff and to calculate and all these just simple stuff at school, but he was not able to do so, unfortunately. But they tried to, even though he was not able to read and write, they tried to work and provide him as a little kid and try to teach him the different abilities that he will need to be having in the future. Like when he first got his job, my grandmother used to always go to the place where he works, always try to see if he is doing this thing in a good way or not, and always try to ask his colleagues to help him with what he's doing. And now, thank God, he teaches the new workers how to work on the machines and how to do the things in this factory. So yeah, they were successful in this aspect. And all what I know about my grandfather, that I look a lot like him. They always tell me that you look exactly like your grandfather. I hope I had the chance to meet them, but unfortunately I didn't have this chance.
Well, you had mentioned earlier that your dad did go through a little bit of bullying, which probably is a worldwide problem. Is that something that you confronted as well as a child?
Well, yeah, of course, but I didn't tell my parents about it, because I didn't want to make them, feel that they are not protecting me enough. I just didn't want to give them this feeling. I just secretly started to different kinds of sports like bodybuilding, like boxing, at a very small age, actually. And I became physically and mentally ready to defend myself. And, thank God I didn't have to use this strength against anyone because, bullies are cowards. They don't do anything harmful when they see that the other person is capable of defending himself. So thank God I was capable of defending myself both physically, mentally, and I didn't have any problems after this from anyone.
Your strength and your family's strength is something that's so impressive because it comes from such a beautiful, peaceful, loving place. And I should have said this right at the beginning, but I, with your culture if we ask anything that you feel uncomfortable answering or overstep any boundary, please tell us, because I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable situation or impose on you, because you're being so gracious with your time and your story, which is beautiful. What did your parents' relationship teach you?
As I said earlier, they are people who are labeled as someone who is not capable of doing things like getting married, getting a job, getting a house, making a family in general. And they were able to do so. They were able to complete each other. My mother has now some hearing problems, so my father always gives her a slight, description of what's going on or what's the people are speaking. They complete each other. There is some aspects that my mother can do better than my father, and some aspects where my father can do it better than my mother. I learned that we should not, label anyone, and we should not, judge anyone based on their condition or based on their, diagnosis, because, first of all, this might make us look stupid, when these people whom we have judged as people who are not capable of doing this surprise us and do, these things better than us. And these people who are, labeled as disabled people can do some things better than people who are not called disabled, that the so-called normal people. That taught me to respect, every human being regardless of their condition, mentally, physically, or condition in their religious aspect or their race aspect or any aspect. Just look to people as human beings. Just don't judge, don't put any labels on anyone. And that has helped me a lot in my life. And I think that it will help me more in the future.
It's so wonderful talking to you. You're such a wonderful person to talk to. Can you just tell us how far along you are in dentistry studying and what your future plans are?
Well, I have one more year to graduate as a dentist. My future plans are not very clear, because of the current situation here in Syria, the economical collapse. You cannot tell what will happen next year here in Syria, and you cannot tell how you will be going to be able to start your own job and start, your own clinic. We as dentists, we have to prepare our clinic. We have to get all the equipments that we need, and you don't know how you will be able to do such things. But my current plans are, after graduation I will have to practice 2 more years of dentistry in a small town before I will be able to open my clinic in a large city. I will have to work with another doctor who has his private clinic for 2 years or so. Then I will have to find a way to start my own clinic, start my own business, and that's it. Maybe as Syrians as Christians in the Middle East, most of us try to immigrate, try to move to another country, because our civil rights here in these countries are not always protected. And I didn't know if I told you earlier, but most of my uncles and aunts live in the United States, in Pennsylvania. We're the only members of the Issa family who doesn't have an American citizenship. So I think I will have to also try to the immigration to another country, because it's easier and it's much safer to start a job and a career in another country. And of course, I will have to not go by myself. I will have to take my parents with me if this plan happens. But it's not clear. Still not clear what will happen in the next 1 or 2 years here in Syria.
Sadr, do you have a favorite childhood memory?
Well, of course, I have many favorite childhood memory, but one of my favorites was when I finished first grade. Here in Syria, they give us, like a report or a paper with all our grades in different classes in the first grade, and all my grades were straight A's. I didn't have any B's or D's or anything. And this paper or this report, we give them to our parents to see how we did in school, all this stuff. And when I gave this paper to my parents, they cried. They were happy to see their kid, getting the education that they were not able to get. Both my parents don't know how to read and write, They were proud to see their only child as a little kid who is doing well at school, which is, I think, at that stage is the most thing that the parents concentrate, is that their kid is doing good in school, has a good good friends, all this stuff. So they were crying, happy crying, and they were proud. And I think I remember that my parent, my father put this paper on his chest, the back towards him, so the grades are showed to the people in front of him, and walked in our neighborhood to show the people that this is my son, this is my kid, and this his grades in school. Look at him, he is doing well, and he's our kid, and he was, so proud, and that feeling, was one of the best feelings that I have ever experienced in my life. I was happy to see them proud. I was happy to see them smiling and happy about my small accomplishment at that age. And so I decided to always give them this emotions, always give them this moment of pride. That's what I've tried to do since that time. I've done a very good job in school. And in ninth grade we have like we call it a ninth grade diploma before we go to high school. And as the first grade, I was the first in my class, and they were again very proud and very happy. And I love, as I said, I love this feeling. I love to give them this experience. And here we are today. As I said earlier, studying dentistry here in Syria is something that has a high social respect and very high social value. So now they feel even more proud that their small kid is now a doctor and will become a doctor who treats others. This very lovely memory in my first grade, when I was 6 years old. That was the moment that shaped and sculpted what I will be doing in future, and that was the moment that kept me in the way that I am in right now. That was the moment that kept me doing the good things and staying away from the bad things. And I don't think that I will be here today if I didn't have these parents. If I had other parents, I don't think I will be here today, doing what I do. I don't know, what I will be doing.
Well, it sounds like they were quite an inspiration to you in forming your life. Your story is an inspiration.
Thank you so much.
I'm trying to keep an interviewing headspace to ask you questions, but I love your story, and I love every aspect and approach of the respect and the mutual respect and dignity, and just just how inspiring. And I hesitate to say normal, because I honestly think that kind of love and foundation and support is something the world needs more of. I wish it was something that was normal, that everybody received that, because you see these great benefits that come from just love. Thank you for sharing. Are there any other words of wisdom? Did your dad ever sit you down for a talk and give you words of wisdom or anything that you held on to?
I hold on to his actions more than words. He is a man of actions. I believe that most of people with Down syndrome are just like him. We, the so-called normal people, tend to speak more than we do, actually, and they are the quite the opposite. I learn about honesty when I see him speaking to others who are trying to hide their mistakes. In many funny situations, some of his colleagues or friends or so try to, when they do something, not good, try to, just hide it, or not share it with the manager or the boss of the work. But my father, who has witnessed this action, cannot hold it, and he straight goes to this guy and tells him right in the eyes that he has done, something not good and tells the boss that this guy has done something not good. And that teaches you about honesty. That teaches you that telling lies to people is not something good, and it's just one small lesson that I've learned from him. You can learn about forgiveness from them. Again, he might get bothered from a colleague of him or a friend of him, and he comes home, sad and maybe a bit angry. But he cannot wait until the next day to go to this person who have bothered him to say that he forgives him and he don't want any problems. He don't like actually to have any kind of negative relationships with any other person in his life. That teaches us about forgiveness. And as I said, there is many lessons that I've learned from his actions, and I've witnessed him, doing so. I don't know if I can, just put a simple list of the things that I've learned, but they are a lot. I cannot even describe them enough in my words. But he was such an amazing parent, such an amazing inspiration in my life, and he will be.
Thank you for sharing that with us. It's so heartfelt.
Our podcast is called If We Knew Then. And so we like to ask guests a lot of times if there's something that you know now that you wish you knew in your past.
Well, I'm very much happy and satisfied about my life. So my only note about this that if I knew that sharing our story could help many families around the world, give them inspiration and give them, hope for their little kids in the future, and change some of the outdated ideas about Down syndrome, then I would more, certainly shared my story much time, ago. I wouldn't, wait until this time to share it. I would have shared, a long time ago to, help the most people possible. Change these outdated ideas about Down syndrome that many people still have until this day. And that's my only note about it.
Sader, it's so wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much. And again, sorry about my English skills, and I hope all the listeners get my ideas just the way I want them to be. And thank you so much for having me.
Crystal clear.
Yeah, I want you to know that your English skills are perfect, and and your message is beautiful and definitely came across very clear, and we appreciate you sharing it. And as a mom and an advocate, I've learned a lot from you. Even a lot of what I speak over Liam, as far as he's more than a diagnosis, and it can sometimes be frustrating having to always speak that. But what I think I've learned from you is, one, the importance of that for being an advocate, but also to not speak it because it's where it matters, which is in our home and in Liam's life. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I wish him a bright future, and I wish you all the best in life. Thank you so much for having me. And hopefully in the future we will be, able to even change more and help more people, hopefully, with the help of good people like you. And again, thank you so much for having me.
Please personally tell your mom and dad for us that we're thinking of them. We had a great time talking to you. We're proud of their son, and we're really just so blessed to have you in our lives, even for just this little bit of time.
Thank you so much. I will definitely, tell them about it. Thank you so much.
Please follow us on Twitter at If We Knew Then Pod, and you can drop us a line on our Facebook page at If We Knew Then Pod, or visit our website, ifweknewthen.com, to send us an email with questions and comments. And you can join our mailing list there and get alerts of future podcast episodes. All these links will be added to this episode's show notes. Thank you again, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of If We Knew Then.